Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this new webinar on cybersecurity in railways organized by ENISA and ERA. I'm Dorothea Spaben, Communication Officer, and will be your moderator today. Despite strict COVID measures and our colleagues working in different European countries, the agency is continuing to fully speed up its activities since the first day of the pandemic, and we are very proud of that. This could be possible only thanks to the good support of our IT colleagues. Where would we be without IT? With our executive director and my colleagues, I feel very honored today to welcome the executive director of ENISA, Mr. Johan Lepasar, and his experts to do with us this webinar. ERA and ENISA are working together on cybersecurity, ENISA being the European Union agency specialized in cybersecurity. The European Union has set up objectives and a framework to raise awareness on cybersecurity for all actors involved. This framework contains several initiatives with a relevance for railways. In the next 1 hour, we will discuss how this European framework affects the railway sector and how, on the other hand, the existing railway framework can evolve to better incorporate the concerns about cybersecurity. After presentations from ENISA and ERA, you will have the possibility to ask questions directly to our experts using the chat function, which you find on the top right corner of your screen, I think. You could also tag questions which you think are important by using the thumb icon. Well, this webinar is being recorded and made available on ERA's YouTube channel for streaming later today or Monday morning. Let me now give the floor to Josef Doppelbauer, Executive Director of the European Union Agency for Railways. Go ahead, Josef.
Thank you very much, Dorothea, and good morning and welcome to today's online event on cybersecurity. And many thanks to Johan Lepasar, Executive Director of ENISA, for co-hosting with us this webinar. Like many other systems, rail systems are impacted by cybersecurity, and this will be even more applicable as digitalization continues to grow in railways. Cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility. Infra managers, railway undertakings, manufacturers, maintainers, they all should know about the threats that could affect their assets. Cybersecurity, even though not strictly speaking part of ERA's mandate, remains a key topic that ERA considers in the evolution of the railway regulatory framework. This is furthermore true as cyber incidents might have an effect on railway safety. Cybersecurity best practices in the rail domain will be promoted by ERA via different means, including mentioning it in the common safety methods. Cybersecurity technical evolution will be introduced in the technical specifications for interoperability, especially to ensure a consistent implementation and to protect interoperability. ERA is committed to supporting the EU and ENISA in ensuring that cybersecurity is duly considered by the railway stakeholders. We are pleased to continue the close cooperation with ENISA, and I now hand over to Johan.
Thank you very much, Josef. I hope that you can all hear me and see me. It is a pleasure today to give my 2 cents for this very important seminar. And the pleasure is twofold, because personally I have a fond memory of railway sector from my previous career when I served for the European Commissioner for Transport and was involved in launching the Shift to Rail initiative. And the second fold, because indeed, as Josef, you said, cybersecurity and railway sector are closely knitted together in terms of finding ways how to address the challenges that we face. Railway sector in particular is important for us because it's a sector which is undergoing a major transformation in terms of automatization, but also in terms of increased number of interlinkages with the internal and external multimodal systems. And that, of course, raises a number of cybersecurity challenges in the sector. But the sector is essentially also an important part of the European economy and the overall mobility of Europeans. And though in the context of pandemic, the mobility of citizens is not so well spread, what we do need to maintain is that we have an internal market where goods can cross borders, and railway sector plays a very important part in this, and also in the greening of our economies. So making sure that the sector is secure and the future of the sector is secure in the digital decade is something that ENISA is very happy to contribute into. We are extremely pleased that we can launch a jointly developed guidelines and recommendations in how to ensure cybersecurity in railway sector in the near-term future. The challenges which I mentioned are manifold. There are questions about how operational and information systems interact with each other. There are questions how we can secure the supply chain. Of course, there is a question of how to make sure that the ERA-TMS is launched and rolled out in a safe and secure way. So I hope that this seminar will shed light on not only on the many challenges, but also on the way forward, and give all the participants few ideas how to tackle and mitigate these possible risks that come with these new developments. So I'm very happy again that we have managed to join forces with ERA on this. I hope that this will not be the first time and the last time when we do that, but actually it is the start of a fruitful cooperation and collaboration that has taken place for many years already. We also acknowledge that there is a wider community, and we are very happy that the European Railway ISAC has been a vibrant place where best practices and information about cyber risks in railway sector can be discussed. And we also look forward to our fruitful continued cooperation within the framework of the Sensenelec and with other partners which are important for the railway sector, such as UNIFE. So thank you again, Josef, for inviting me. Thank you for co-organizing this event in such a nice manner, and I really like to wish everybody a fruitful day and a fruitful seminar. So thank you very much again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lepasar. Thank you for your warm words, and I'm sure that ERA and ENISA will do more events together in the near future. May I now introduce two experts from ENISA, Dimitra Liveri and Marianti Theocharidou, who will give a high-level introduction to ENISA's activities on cybersecurity in the railway sector.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. Thank you very much to ERA and to Mr. Doppelbauer, and of course to our Executive Director for being here and for opening this webinar. I am Dimitra Liveri. I am a Network and Information Security expert in ENISA, and together with my colleague, Ms. Marianti Theocharidou, we will present to you our activities in ENISA on railway cybersecurity. So, the vision of ENISA is to create a trusted and secure Europe. So what do you see? Sorry, let me just go back and share my screen. Thank you. So, as I said, our mission is to achieve a high common level of cybersecurity across the Union in cooperation with the wider community. Our activities span towards four basic pillars, which is to, first of all, to make cybersecurity an integral part for all European policy, to support operational cooperation between member states in case of a large cybersecurity crisis, to build cybersecurity capacity in the member states across all sectors, and to create trusted solutions through certification. For all these activities, we always engage with our communities from the public and private sector, and they are our empowered stakeholders. So, one of the most important legislations on cybersecurity is the Network and Information Security Directive, the so-called NIS Directive, which has the scope to improve member states' cybersecurity capabilities through increased EU-level cooperation. So what this directive entails is that, first of all the member states need to have in place a national NIS strategy, a national cybersecurity strategy. They also need to have a national competent authority, the National NIS Authority, and a designated National Computer Security Incident Response Team, a CSIRT, to monitor the implementation and, of course, to clarify on cooperation and to build on the NIS directive. The legislative text itself creates two bodies. One is a so-called cooperation group. It has a more strategic role and view of the whole implementation of the directive, and is comprised by the EU member states, namely the national competent authorities, the European Commission, and ENISA. And from the operational, the tactical side, the directive creates the CSIRT network. It's the team, the community, comprised by the national CSIRTs, the European Commission, and ENISA, who is a secretariat. What does actually the NIS directive say? What does it actually ask? Is that it requires the operators of essential services and the digital service providers to adopt risk management practices. And that means to implement cybersecurity measures and to notify the national competent authorities in case of a major cybersecurity risk. The target audience, as I mentioned already, of this directive are two kinds of stakeholders: the operators of essential services and the digital service providers. The railway sector is designated and identified as an operator of essential service, and namely the infrastructure managers and the railway undertakings are described in the Annex 2 of this directive as essential service operators, so they are in scope of the directive, required to abide to the requirements, the provisions of this directive. ENISA started working on railway security with the publication of the NIS directive, and our major goal initially was to support the implementation of the NIS directive. But apart from making sure that we achieve harmonized implementation across the 28 EU member states, the 27 EU member states, ENISA is also partnering up with the European Railway, ISAC, and with the private sector, so the operators themselves. We also support standardization and certification activities through participating in the Senelec working group on railway applications and cybersecurity. And last but not least, we are collaborating closely with ERA. We touched slightly cybersecurity for ERTMS, and let me just announce, as also our executive director said, while we speak, we in ENISA, we are publishing the first report on cybersecurity measures for the railway transport sector. I will now pass the floor to Marianthi, my colleague, who will present extensively this this report. I will be managing the slides, but Marianthi, please let me know to swap. Okay. I think I should still manage the slides, if you don't mind. Okay. So Marianthi, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes. Our apologies again. Thank you, Dimitra, for passing the floor. At ENISA, we conducted a study that took 2 years to complete. And we did that in close collaboration with infrastructure managers and railway undertakings in the EU, and together with the European Railway Agency and the European Railway Information and Sharing Center. Our primary target was stakeholders of the railway sector. Sorry, what's going on? I'm showing the slides again. Hopefully that should work. Is that okay? But we received input from 21 member states that have railway services, but we also included input from other stakeholders of the railway sector, such as certification bodies, the industry and manufacturers itself, and also from railway undertakings and infrastructure managers that have not been identified under the NIS directive in their respective member states. During this study, we focused on some key elements which I depict here. First, we did a thorough review of the policy and regulatory context, which had to cover both the cybersecurity one for the railway sector, but also relevant frameworks that relate to cybersecurity in the railway sector. And we then did a mapping of all the stakeholders that are involved in this process, especially the ones that have a role to play with respect to cybersecurity. And you will see in our report all the different authorities that relate to the to have some that either issue guidelines or are responsible for ensuring compliance with cybersecurity requirements. Then we focused on the operators of essential services themselves, and we asked them two things. Which are the services that are essential for the functioning of their organization and railway, and then which are the key systems. And this was a first effort to see what are the elements that need to be protected in the sector, so that we can apply security measures to them. We then proceeded to discuss with the operators we interviewed which cybersecurity measures they already apply, and this was done to see which is the level of maturity in the sector and where are the challenges and the gaps with respect to implementation of specific measures. We also collaborated with ERA, taking into account the most important system in the EU, the European Railway Traffic Management System, and we have some initial considerations with respect to cybersecurity, which we also discuss in the report. Now, which are the more important railway services? In 2019, the European Commission issued a report describing how the member states have identified under the directive which services are essential, but they use different levels of granularity and different set of services. So we used this this group of services, the 8 ones you see, which is the common base, and we based the discussion on this. We asked the railway undertakings, infrastructure managers, which are more important for them to understand what is the key services to protect. And here you see some results which make sense. You see that all operators want to ensure that traffic is maintained in the networks, and that safety and security of passengers and goods is a high priority. We saw some differences when it comes to infrastructure managers and railway undertakings. And as expected, for the infrastructure managers, maintaining the railway infrastructures is very important, while for the railway undertakings, ensuring operations and that the carrying of goods and passengers was a priority for them. We then, together with the operators and based on desk research, we created this overview of the railway systems. You see that it covers both the information technology and the operational technology of the sector. This is a high-level mapping, but this was the basis for the discussion we had on which systems are more important to protect. You will see that several of them are under the jurisdiction or use of both railway undertakings and infrastructure managers. And you can also see in some of them the location, which is actually plays a role with respect to how to implement security measures on them. The responses we got were focusing mainly on operations, namely signaling, command and control, and telecommunications being identified as the most important systems to protect. But also the systems related to security and safety received equal importance from the operators, and there is where they focus their efforts to boost cybersecurity systems I mentioned. Here's an overview. This is not an exhaustive list of all the measures we discussed with the operators on which areas show high maturity with respect to the implementation of the measures and which show low maturity. We based this analysis on the 29 cybersecurity measures that were issued by the cooperation group of the NIS Directive, which is the body of the authorities of the cybersecurity authorities of the European member states that Dimitra described earlier. And they are considered minimum security measures that need to be applied in all sectors that fall under the scope of the directive. And that includes, of course, the railway sector. You see here that we have high maturity in measures that relate to governance. For example, the operators reported 66% of them that they have already updated their risk analysis and the security policy to include all systems, meaning also the operational technology ones. They also are very confident when it comes to measures that already relate to safety. So for example, 69% of them show that not only they implement, but they also control physical and environmental security in their networks. And they feel very confident about how effective these measures are for their organization. They also are very confident when it comes to incident, for example, incident response or crisis management, business continuity management. These measures, they already have processes because they have to deal also with safety-related incidents. But the difficulty they report is that they have not fully included cyber incidents in their practices. And the more mature operators we talked with already perform emergency exercises to test the ability of their personnel to deal with cyber attacks. Now, on the areas of low maturity, here the main challenge is related to the measures that require technical expertise, cryptographic controls, detection of incidents, applying measures, cybersecurity measures on industrial control systems. Here we had lower rates of implementation, either because there were legacy systems that cybersecurity options are simply not available or very difficult to implement, or because the organizations reported that they lack often the expertise that covers both cybersecurity but also deep knowledge of the railway systems. And a lot of them report that they need, for this more technical, more difficult measures, they require the support of the manufacturers or their suppliers in order to ensure that the measures are actually applied. So there is where we see the main gaps, also the lack of standardization and the ability to get certification with respect to cybersecurity. These were challenges that the operators reported. Now, based on these discussions we had, we identify several areas that improvement can be made. There is a lot of work to be done in improving the cybersecurity culture and awareness levels within the railway organizations. And this is coupled also with the need for standardization and certification, which is tailored to the railway industry. There are already very promising steps towards this direction by the CENELEC Technical Committee that is about to issue technical specification on cybersecurity for the railway sector. The specificities of the sector, such as the legacy systems that I mentioned, or the fact that infrastructure managers have to maintain vast and complex infrastructures, also pose challenges. And the need to reconcile the safety and cybersecurity mindsets within the organizations, which are often not aligned. We, of course, all operators reported the issue of cost, the fact that they need to remain competitive, efficient, and at the same time cyber secure. This requires investments and maybe even organizational changes, which take time. And on the compliance side, there is complexity. There are a lot of authorities that are involved, different specifications that they have to comply with, and any effort towards harmonization of the regulatory framework will assist the sector to go forward. Now, on a positive side, there are a lot of activities already taking place. As I mentioned, standardization efforts. The European Commission and the member states are already reviewing both the NIS directive, but also their national practices and updating them to ensure that there is appropriate guidelines for the railway sector with respect to cybersecurity. So there are positive steps towards this direction. We also collaborate, as the colleagues also mentioned, with ERA, and so we hope that we will be able to assist the European Railway Agency to update technical specifications in the future for the RTMS. We already include some of this in our report. And because the sector is evolving and digitization is one of the priorities, we hope that since we already take care of cybersecurity already, we hope that this digitization effort will happen with cybersecurity in mind, and we believe that this is the way forward for the sector and the industry. Thank you for your time. We managed to do the presentation. I will now pass the floor to Thomas Satele from ERA to give his presentation. Thank you.
I'd like to start by expressing my gratitude to both the ERA and ENISA executive directors for their joint introduction, highlighting the synergies between our two agencies. I would like also to thank my colleague from ENISA, Dimitra and Marianti, for their very interesting presentation in the first part. It's clear that railways are in the focus of ENISA, which is beneficial for railway stakeholders. With this second part, now I would like to focus on the ERA activities related to cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is a growing concern in our digital society, and railways are no exception. The gradual introduction of information systems and operational technologies is concurrently offering new opportunities for increasing the efficiency of the rail system or enhance passenger experience, and novel challenges to protect this evolving railway system. In this presentation, I would like to provide you with more information on what is ERA doing to tackle cyber threats in railways. Concretely, our activities are focusing first on monitoring all initiatives related to cybersecurity in a railway context. I will detail the most relevant ones in the following slides. The objective is to identify and promote adoption of security by design features in future radio communication and signaling systems. This part is about the necessary technical evolution to enhance the robustness of the railway system. However, not only the technical part matters in cybersecurity. This is why the safety requirements are also considered, including the assessment of safety consequences originated by security threats. Finally, the agency is considering how to reflect the above in the railway regulatory framework. Technical specifications for interoperability are reviewed to increase the cyber robustness while preserving interoperability. And common safety methods should consider the acknowledgement of cybersecurity issues that might influence safety. Let's now focus on the most relevant initiatives in railway cybersecurity. First, let's acknowledge that there are plenty of initiatives on cybersecurity, and it is difficult to monitor all of them. I therefore want to summarize here the ones that are of the highest relevance for railway stakeholders. As said before, cybersecurity is not only about technical enhancements. It's also about getting the right information at the right moment. From this perspective, the European Rail Information Sharing and Analysis Center is an extremely important platform for the rail stakeholders. ISAC is a model promoted by ENISA to exchange information between trusted members. ERA-ISAC is a successful initiative gathering more than 50 members under the lead of key infrastructure managers and railway undertakings, and supported by ERA, ENISA, UIC, and the industry. This forum is aiming at sharing, under strict disclosure rules, best practices or return of experience on cyber threats targeting the railways. As an example, some vulnerability disclosure can trustfully be spoken about in this forum. As a railway organization, there is definitely great benefit to get in touch with the ERA-ISAC to start developing your internal cybersecurity culture. Also, on the not only technical part, the CENELEC Working Group 26 is another key initiative to be mentioned. This working group is composed of a large number of railways operators, industry, notified bodies, that have been working very hard over the last years to develop a consistent approach to introduce requirements and recommendations for cybersecurity within the railway sector. The draft technical specification 5701 that will be delivered very soon is expected to become a milestone in cybersecurity standards for rail and an excellent basis to develop rail cybersecurity risk assessment. On the more technical side, other initiatives are expected to importantly contribute to the evolution of cybersecurity requirements for rail. Shift to Rail is amongst those initiatives, and in particular, the technical demonstrator 2.11 on cybersecurity. Research and innovation is focusing in this project on the definition of a security by design and security by default system dedicated to railways. Some useful deliverables will be shared, for example, like shared security services or protection profiles specifications. In addition, a demonstrator is planned to apply the developed methodology to railways. UIC is also establishing a platform for cybersecurity solutions. This platform should propose practical solutions for cybersecurity from a telecom angle, focusing on critical elements of the railway system. UIC is also inherently considering cybersecurity concerns in their future railway mobile communication system project. Finally, although more generic than only rail, here are some initiatives interesting for railway stakeholders. First, the ENISA Transport Resilience and Security Expert Group, which is a forum on specialized work streams to exchange viewpoints and ideas on cybersecurity threats, challenges, and solutions. In this group, the different transport modes, air, rail, water, maritime, can complement each other. DG Move is also very active on cybersecurity for the different transport modes. And a transport cybersecurity toolkit will be available early December, where transport companies will benefit from a study on main cybersecurity threats, potential consequences, and risk mitigation actions. Finally, ETSI Technical Committee Cyber is something to monitor if you are a rail stakeholder. Practically, the technical report implementation of the NIS directive is a useful guidance to consider how your IT systems should be treated under the NIS directive. This is also a very good first step to know more about cybersecurity risk management. Another part of the ERA activities is to consider the global picture about cybersecurity, to take note of the best practices in other transport modes, and ensure that the railway regulatory framework is adequately adapted. For this, we are extremely glad to have the support of ENISA and the European Commission to support our railway stakeholders in their cybersecurity strategy development. ENISA is also offering a technical support on specific cybersecurity discussions, such as encryption. We are also thankful for our cooperation with the other EU agencies in the transport sector. For instance, being invited to observe how the aviation sector defines its cybersecurity target thanks to the European Strategic Cooperation Platform led by EASA is inspiring. Also, considering that cybersecurity strategies are defined as per the NIS directive at national level, it is very important to stay in touch with both the national cybersecurity agencies and the railway national safety authorities to dialogue about potential gaps in cybersecurity requirements. And finally, being an observer in the ERA-ENISA is definitely a must to consider their deliverables in the evolution of the rail regulatory framework. In conclusion, cybersecurity activities at the Agency for Railways can be summarized in two pillars. The first pillar is the regulation considerations based on monitoring of relevant activities to cover the safety consequences originated by cybersecurity threats and the subsequent update of railway regulatory framework to consider cybersecurity. The second pillar is the cooperation building, where the agency stays very close to the Commission, ENISA, and other transport agencies, dialogue with national authorities for cybersecurity impact on railway safety, and support the railway stakeholders in sharing their best practices. Thank you very much for your attention, and we will now move to the question and answer session.